When I first received the email that my talk had been accepted, I was thrilled beyond belief. I was like, yes, yes. And then I read that it would be in person. And I thought, oh no, that means I've got to wear pants. Not only that, but I would be seen from head to toe, and everyone would notice that I had gained the COVID-19. Or was it the COVID-20 or 25, but who's counting? And people wouldn't get to see me through my Zoom filter, which softens my face, or my toasted almond Instagram filter, which puts on my makeup better than I do. And even worse, if I were to zone out or start to multitask, I couldn't turn off my video. And if I say something stupid, you can't mute me. I say this in jest, but actually a lot of these thoughts pass through my mind. Because what used to be an automatic, even exciting endeavor, which was getting ready for a networking event or an in-person public speaking event, because I am a public speaker, has turned into something tumultuous. My emotions and my mental thoughts and my health thoughts and physical things, it has caused so much exertion that sometimes I think, well, it's just better to stay home. It's easier, it's less stressful, and it's probably safer. And although I share this, I resist this because I am here to share with you today that staying home poses the real danger and being in person could save our lives. Now, there's been a lot of research on the impact of the pandemic and from every field of study. And it really can go overwhelming when you're trying to summarize for a talk, especially if you're not a mental health professional or a scientist or able to read complex abstracts of methodologies and measurements without falling asleep. So here's what I got so far. Since the pandemic, anxiety and depression have increased a massive 25%. And the experts believe the reason for this, the major cause, is the stress that comes from social isolation, which can also be exacerbated by loneliness, which has a lot of problems that come with that. But of course, once the lockdown lifted, isolation lifted, and the world opened back up. The only problem was I didn't open back up. When I had once been an avid networker and I would attend weekly meetings to build my business, I now found that I could find all these networking events online. And I could just go to work in my pajama bottoms with a stylish top, of course. And I also discovered that as a public speaking coach, that people were very comfortable learning about public speaking online. As a matter of fact, my Business Speaker Academy, which had been in person before COVID, was now completely online. And what I discovered was that it was growing and it was in different stages, which is great, but not that great because it gave me more of a reason to not venture out. I seem to be suffering from a failure to launch back out there. And I wondered what happened to my sense of adventure, my excitement about meeting new people and having new experiences. And I even started to feel like I was having negative thoughts about the people that I did know, that maybe they really didn't care about me. And little did I know that all of these things could be caused from my self-isolation. So that was starting to get to me. And it turns out that there is a syndrome for this. And it was coined by Arthur Bergman, who is a psychiatrist who noticed it in his patients, and it's a fear of rejoining society post-COVID. And there are studies that support his claims. So it's called the cave syndrome. And it can lead from anything from extreme fear to just an uncomfortableness with rejoining society. And there are studies that support this. One study showed that 49% of adults were uneasy about venturing out into outside activities. And even higher in young people, teens, and even the group 18 to 24 was 61%. So they're having even more difficulties, and they reported the most loneliness. And this is concerning because loneliness has a variety of mental and health problems, such as the anxiety and depression again, and also an increased risk of death, early death. And there's also heart disease and substance abuse and domestic violence. So all of these things are happening. And part of it is because after spending 2 years in isolation has become our comfort zone. And it's getting back out there that causes discomfort. Berkeley College university professor, Robert Levinson, put it this way. He said, for our own preservation, we have to emerge from our bubbles and explore. We have to rediscover how to work together again, how to play, how to meet people, how to start relationships, and how to end relationships. Phew, that's a lot of emerging. But if we do stay isolated, there are some things that we can count on getting worse. Our loneliness, our social skills atrophying, our narrow-mindedness. Because during COVID, we all restricted our social circles, and our tribe remained smaller. And when we're in our tribe, we start to become suspicious of people outside our tribe, which can lead to unconscious bias and thoughts of suspicious behaviors coming from people. So that can be a problem there. And then we've also, what else is going to get worse is this idea of our fear-based thinking, that perceived threats will feel like real threats. We will take less risks. And then we have this thing called brain shrinkage. They studied 9 explorers who spent 14 months in Antarctica. And what they discovered is that their hippocampus, part of their brain, shrunk, which is the one that's involved in short-term and long-term memory. But probably the most dangerous reason for staying put is that we are training our brains for surviving instead of the curiosity, the challenge, and the ingenuity that comes from thriving, from solving problems, and from being together to work for a better world. So maybe it would be good to remind ourselves of what we're missing. Real life contact, like a touch on the shoulder or a handshake, which studies have revealed builds instant trust, or a hug. The many benefits of hugging are they lower depression and anxiety. They boost your immune system. It even decreases pain. There are so many benefits that we get from hugging. And even just the proximity of being near each other means we get to see our facial expressions and all of our body language, and we get to connect with people that are close to us. And this will most likely build our tribe. And as we build our tribe, we will have less suspicions and unconscious bias of others. So that will also help us in a lot of different ways. So how do we launch back out there? There's a couple things that I wanted to share with you. Another thing that we miss by not being in person is a room full of laughter, hearing people laugh. As a humor speaker, I now present online. And when I present online, I have to, tell my jokes, and the timing is all blown by everybody's computers with all their glitches, and the laughing and the audio is all out of sync. And it's really taken the joy out of hearing a room full of people laugh. The same thing with eye contact. Eye contact is one of the most powerful ways we communicate with each other. And although there is some research that says we can do this on our computers, maybe more on FaceTime, I know when I'm speaking online, I have to look at the little camera above everyone's face. And that is fake eye contact. That is not real contact. And so when we are in a room full of people and laugh together, the health benefits are so many. They're all of the ones that have to do with hugging and many more. And then there's the boon to our economy. You know, before COVID, there were so many in-person meetings, and this boosted the economy in all our states. And then look at locally, if we go to our local events and we go out to dinner, our communities will thrive and grow, which is really important for our continued growth and expansion. So how do we launch ourselves back out there into the real life? Well, for me, I got the insights and inspiration from a rather surprising place. I was on vacation in Florida with my little tribe, and we went to the Kennedy Space Center. And when I was at the Kennedy Space Center, I was just amazed by what I saw. It wasn't like when I was a little kid and I actually got to see the moon landing in person in my living room with my dad. I remember sitting there with him, and I was getting pretty bored, you know, and he was so frustrated with me. He's like, Deb, this is history in the making. But now you got to imagine, I'm a little kid, our TV is about this big, and it's in black and white. And to me, I would look there, and the astronauts just looked like marshmallows, like hopping around on the ground. So it wasn't that great. But this time, as I was at the center and I listened to all the courageous stories of the explorers who had the courage to go into space, and all of the thousands of people who believed that the impossible was possible, and they worked tirelessly to make it happen, it became real for me for the first time. I realized that my launching was not half as difficult as theirs was. Who knows more about launching, isolation, and re-emerging on Earth than the astronauts? And they had some advice for us during COVID, in which we can use right now. One of the first ones is that they encouraged us to go out and walk in nature. Now, they have to do exercise every day to make sure their muscles don't atrophy and for their mental health and well-being. And so I don't know if you noticed, but right during COVID, man, I went to the park and it was filled with people walking everywhere. And now, literally no one is there. Or at least I don't think they are, because I haven't been there in a while. So that might be a good idea. And then when I think about understanding isolation and re-emerging back on Earth, the astronauts will tell you they experience social awkwardness too. Even the National Society of Social Anxiety said that the good news is that because of COVID, we all feel socially awkward right now. So it's good to just get out there. Another thing that the astronauts said was how important humor was for them to diffuse tense situations and get through what can be awkward situations. And it was John Glenn, when he first orbited the Earth, and he was asked, how did it feel? And he said, it felt like you would feel if you looked around and realized 60,000 parts were built by the lowest bidder. Yeah, that's scary. Excuse me. And then there's the idea of understanding what they have experienced is exposure therapy. And that is exposing ourselves slowly to uncomfortable situations and then building up to bigger and bigger events. And that's something the astronauts did too. But probably the most poetic thing that I remember is the quote by Kelly Scott, who was an astronaut that spent nearly a year on the International Space Center. And he said, we are all connected. When you look at Earth from space, there are no borders. What we have in common is more powerful than how we are different. And if we can come together and solve our problems, the better off we will be. So I'm ready to emerge and explore. And if you'd like to join me, I just have one reminder. You've got to wear your pants. Thank you.